I've been told this like dozens of times. I'm the most surveilled person in the world. They have monitoring tools on my camera. My phone is hacked. My email's hacked. Everything is hacked. I've had to turn it all off and buy new stuff like multiple times. I think they've planted something into my brain.
Today's guest needs no introduction in the world of cybersecurity, but we're giving him one anyways. He's the voice behind Darknet Diaries, one of the most addictive, binge-worthy cybersecurity podcasts on the internet. He's taken true stories from the dark corners of the web. We were talking hackers, breaches, spies, and digital heists, and turned them into cinematic audio experiences. But before the storytelling, before the fame, he was a burnt-out network engineer. In this episode, we're diving into the real stories behind Darknet Diaries, Jack's career's journey from IT to InfoSec to Icon, and the career lessons he's learned along the way. Welcome to the show, Jack.
Wow, that was such an intro. Thank you very much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I really appreciate you taking the time. Been listening to your show for a long time and just love everything you do.
That's very sweet of you. Thank you.
Before we dive in, I gotta ask, what is one story you've told on Darknet Diaries that kind of still gives you chills whenever you think about it?
Ooh, chills. Yeah, I think chills. Oh, I think the comms, the dirty comms stuff gives me chills because what this is, it's really just teenagers running amok on the internet, stealing millions of dollars in crypto and just being completely ruthless about it. And then not only that, there's a lot of infighting between them. So if one of them discovers, like it's those old cowboy western movies where there's like four guys who rob a train. And then they're all camping in the desert after the robbery, and they're looking at each other like, well, I could split this up four ways, or I could split it up one way by killing everyone.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
And they do the same thing amongst themselves. Once they have a big lick, some rival, kids will try to steal it from them, and it's just crazy what goes on there, and it just feels wrong to me. And the thing is that we all grew up in a time where we did wrong things. There were these kind of times where, maybe in the 80s it was phreaking and you would break into phone systems. And then in the 90s it was wares where you would just download piracy. And then, this was a time before iTunes, right? We were just, the only way to get music was online was to download it. There's no way to buy it. There's no way to listen to it otherwise. There's no Spotify. And so we were downloading tons of stuff. And then in the 2000s it was anonymous. And then now it's the dirty comms. These guys, it's called the comms. I call it the dirty comms. But these kids are just trying to steal crypto and steal other people's Robux and V-Bucks and just rob each other. And it's crazy when you see teens robbing teens on the internet. It's just a wild time.
It's mind-blowing. And during your storytelling and stuff, was there ever a moment you thought that this could actually kind of get me in some trouble here?
Yeah. I do wonder sometimes because I interview people who have committed crimes and maybe they haven't gone to, been caught or had justice, and so now it's like, all right, if I air this person's story, are the police going to come after me? Are they going to say, well, we need to, you just showed us where the criminal is, now tell us their email address or get us in contact, and suddenly now I'm in trouble there.
Right.
And so I've got to be real careful in those situations of how much gets disclosed, how much I know about them, what kind of records are kept after the fact. Because sometimes my guests are so sensitive that it's just like, okay, after this moment, everything is burned. I'm deleting every email, every correspondence, the entire podcast that we recorded. And, it's just like a voice actor that talks for them instead or whatever. And you can reach out later, but it's going to be fresh. And I'm going to act like I don't know who you are. and that way we're all covered.
That's crazy. I kind of want to dive into your story. Doing my research, you kind of had an interesting story getting into the tech industry. What initially drew you into tech and then later kind of into cybersecurity?
Computers draw me into tech. Like when I was a teenager and I got online for the first time, it was AOL and got into chat rooms. that was like the moment where I just couldn't look away. And it's been that way for decades now. I just love computers. The connectivity ability and the resource it is. It's there's this story of, is it Snow Crash, where it's the metaverse.
Oh gosh,
And
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
and yeah, it's just this idea of the metaverse. And again, it's been kind of revived in the last few years. Even Facebook renamed themselves to Meta. But the idea here is not that we have these VR goggles and we go into this world where it's like some virtual reality thing. I think there is so much of our life that it comes through this computer. It is where we get all of our entertainment, all our music, all our movies, everything we watch is on the computer. It's how we communicate with our loved ones. It's how we consume new content, like listen to story or read books, listen to audiobooks, podcasts. It's how we fall in love now. We fall in love over a computer and through this. And so to me, we're living in the metaverse. And I felt like that was like when I was a teenager and I looked in it, I felt like it was just like a whole world in there that I could just explore. I mean, just the sound of my computer making that sound of the dial tone was,
I remember those days.
it gives you like this feeling of infinite possibilities of like, wow, this can connect to anywhere in the world and all these computers are out there and I could do all this stuff. That dial tone was just such a magical sound that your computer, it was like the sound of possibility. And that's just, that fire just sparked in me during those first moments of being online and just discovering like all these people on here and all this content and stuff. It was just such a great thing. And so, yeah, that's where I think the love of computers came from. And even today, it's just like I cannot get enough. I'm studying like what's new and hearing all the latest tech and can't wait to like go into the future and see what's there and find all the new cool things that are going on. So I'm just like super amazed by the technology of the world and love it all.
It's amazing to think about just over the short amount of time how much tech has evolved. I mean, I remember when I first got into tech. I was a kid growing up. We had an old like Pentium 1 computer that ran MS DOS, and like I remember playing games on it and then trying to like figure out what else I could do with it. And I remember, I was first learning about the internet. And yeah, it was back in the AOL days. And my parents were like, I had a computer, but it couldn't be connected to the internet. As far as they knew, I only played games on it. And I remember like somehow I got my hands on an AOL subscription, and we only had one phone jack in the entire house. And it was on
Hmm.
the other side of the house from the computer. So I went out and bought like this longest phone line I could get and ran it through the house when no one was home, so I could try to get online and do stuff like that. That's really what sparked it. And then in high school for me, my high school actually offered the Cisco CCNA, and that's when I was like, "This is it." I got to do this. And for me, it didn't click right away. Like I fell in love with like computers. I knew I wanted to do it as a career, but it ended up taking me, gosh, it took me like 6 or so years to actually land a job in the career field, just because I was doing jobs to put food on the table, keep a roof over our head and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Gosh, it was longer than 6 years, but anywho, I had a really unconventional route, and I'm kind of curious, like, how did you actually make the leap getting into the tech industry?
Well, my dad really wanted me to go become a VCR repairman. He said, that is the career for you. You'll do great. You're taking things apart. I don't think you have it in you to be like an engineer or anything like that, but technician, I bet you could do it if you really applied yourself. Because I was kind of a screwball as a kid, so it didn't look like I had much hope. but but I said, no, 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 I want to be an engineer. And so I begged to go to computer engineering school. So I went to college and I took the classes, and I really excelled in that computer engineering. So that it's just a very wide, not very deep understanding of computers. Right, you're learning operating systems, a few programming languages, how file structures are, binary, Boolean, electronics. Like it's just a little bit of all this stuff, and yeah, I came out of it thinking I was hot stuff. Like I've learned all the things that you can learn on a computer. This is great. I hope people hire me as an engineer now. And absolutely nobody wanted to hire me as an engineer. It was like, and I felt too proud to become an intern. I was like, no, I'm an engineer. I'm not going to be an intern. That's not what I went to school to be, as an intern. I went to school to be an engineer. And so I just wouldn't entertain the idea of internship anywhere. It was engineer or nothing, and it just absolutely wasn't there. I don't know how I missed it, but I applied myself. I went to career villages and all kinds of stuff to try to find it. I couldn't. So yeah, I ended up doing odd and ends jobs just for like 8, 10 years even before coming back to computers. And I said, oh, well, I probably should refresh my skills. And that's when I got my CCNA, the Cisco Certified Network Associates. And I'm like, I'm back. I've got my associates. I'll take an internship if that's all you got. And people were definitely hiring for that at the time. So that's when I got my first job in the NOC, a Network Operations Center, and yeah, my career took off from there.
That's crazy. You know, I focus on career advice here on this channel, and people always ask me, should I go certifications or careers? And I always tell people, you got to find what path works for you. College was not for me. Um, Out of high school, I actually graduated a year early from high school, and my high school paid for me to go to college, my first year of college, which was really cool. And to be honest with you, I was too interested in girls. I don't know. That's the excuse I'm going to use. Like I just could not focus. College wasn't for me, so I dropped out. Again, I did odd and end jobs just to put food on the table, and it took me a while to like realize like I was a bulldozer operator before I got into tech, and I made really good money as a bulldozer operator, but I was utterly miserable. Just hated my job, hated life, was like serious depression, anxiety issues.
Mm.
And I went to my wife, I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to change careers and I want to try to go after a job in tech. And she's like, I support you, you got to make about what you're making now though. We have a house. We at the time we just had our third kid, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to start studying. And at first I thought I'm going to have to go to college for this, but I went to YouTube and started studying on there. And it was right about that time I ended up losing my job, and as a bulldozer operator. And so I had to sit down with my wife again. I'm like, either I can just get a job again to put food on the table, make sure our rent's paid, or this is an opportunity to make a jump and make a career change. And I did. And from there on, it was, I had landed a basic help desk job. And within 3 years, I went from help desk to director of network operations.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, you were
I
really
think
hungry. I like
I
that
was.
because you were like, I want the higher job, but what do I have to? What's the path to get there? Let's go. And did
Exactly.
they when you got hired in at the help desk, did they give you a career path? Like here's where you'll go after 3 months, 9 months, a year.
They didn't. So like I got hired on at a hotel chain. It was a privately owned hotel company, and I was just hired as on the help desk. And they're like, there's no other positions. There was like help desk and then my boss, which was like the general IT manager. And he's like, this is it. And I was kind of bummed out, but I'm like, I got to do my time. I'm going to do 2 years here. But while I was there, I grinded so hard. I tried to learn everything possible. By the time I left there after 2 years, I went from the help desk to designing the complete IT infrastructure for like all our brand new hotels we were building, any remodels. Like if it had an Ethernet port on it or if it connected to the internet, I designed it. I sat down with the engineers, the architects, and all that. And that really, I think, catapulted my career from there.
Yeah, that's great. So when I got that job in the knock, they actually did give me a whole career path. They said, "All right, so you're going to be a knock. I think it was probation period for 30, 90 days, right? So you're going to training for 90 days. After that, you're a knock technician, and after 6 months of being a knock technician, you're a senior knock technician, and then after that, you get a couple certs like a professional level cert, like CCNP or something like that. Then you can apply for any of the engineering positions that are here. And so in our network operations center, we had a lot of different routes. We had the route switch, the data route. We had the security route. There was the telephony route and the IT support, like system administration route. And so when you get in the knock, you get familiar with like all these different systems. You're seeing, I mean, this was a managed service provider, so we see lots of different customers. We saw hotels and schools and banks, and government and retail, and we were in their networks troubleshooting things. And so some of that stuff you start gravitating more towards, like, oh, I like these devices. Like, I mean, I personally really like being on the CLI, right? So anytime it's CLI, I'm like, that's where I want to be.
Yep.
Phone and Windows computers don't have that same thing, right? They have very visual things, and I just had frustration with that. So I was like, anytime that it's a CLI issue, I want to know everything to know about this device. And so that's where I like gravitated towards. And I did get my CCNP while in the knock, and they said, "Wow, you're like hungry for all these steps. Like you just keep wanting to go right through this. While there's a lot of other guys in here that absolutely want, like they just want to be handed the next step. They don't actually want to do the work to get to the next step. And you're actually like fulfilling all the check boxes." Because I was asking them, like, just tell me the check boxes I need to check to get to the next step.
Exactly.
If it's just time, that doesn't quite make sense to me, because why not test me on knowledge? Why not test me on skills? Like all these kind of things, or even attendance. And so, yeah, I followed this career path almost exactly. I just went down every box and then picked, well, I didn't even pick security. What happened was a security engineer position opened, and they said, "Hey, you've been doing so good. Do you want to apply for the security engineer role?" And I said, "You had me at engineer. That's what I've been trying to get this whole time is engineer. I'm in.
.com. I am all in."
And I didn't know anything about Cisco firewalls at the time. They asked me, like, show me like 3 commands on a firewall. I was like, oh crap, this. And they're like, nope, doesn't work. This doesn't work. This doesn't work. I was like, what is this? And so I realized it was a little different than Cisco router. And I quickly picked up on what the differences were. And I said, okay, ask me again. I'm ready. I got it. And so they said, yeah, you're a fast learner. And that's when I got my position as a security engineer. And I'll tell you, once I got to security, it felt like a match made in heaven for me, because honestly, it wasn't my goal. I was going to be a data route switch kind of guy. But when it was security, it was like, well, now you need to know about these programming languages, these operating systems, this binary, this Boolean logic, all this kind of stuff, because these are the way attacks work. This is how exploits are happening. And you just need to know a little bit about everything in order to secure like the whole chain of connections. And I was like, holy cow, I know a little bit about all these things. This is perfect for me. And absolutely was the right way for me to go. And I fell in love with security. Like, it's kind of the second time I fell in love with tech is when I landed at that security engineer position.
You know, I've experienced that feeling before in my career, and it's such a magical feeling. My big goal is I want to be like a network administrator or a system administrator, and I honestly I feel like I overshot that in my career. When I became, you know, in my current role, I'm a director of network operations. Like I just fell in love again with networking. You know, just absolutely joy. And before we get too much into your cybersecurity story, if you had to go back and do it again, would you still go the college route, or do you think you would just go the CCNA route?
Well, so on that career path that they gave me, I was only halfway through it where when I got to engineer. And after that, it was like there's junior engineer, then there's senior engineer, then there's architect, then there's subject matter expert. And so I was seeing this path ahead of me that I was trying to fulfill as well. And it wasn't none of those things all the way to subject matter expert. I think maybe subject matter expert had a requirement for a degree, but none of those things had a degree requirement throughout. And so the whole time that I'm going, checking all these boxes, getting all these promotions, and I was in that company for 10 years, so I had a lot of promotions over that time. Every time I'm like, here's my degree. Does that help me get a promotion? And they're like, no, not for this role. I'm like, oh my God, why did I get a degree? And so
Oh,
it really didn't feel like the degree mattered until I started getting into that architectural role, subject matter expert role, which is where I ended up at the end as a SOC architect and subject matter expert. And so that's this security operations center, right? So I built that whole thing. And it was there where, you know, somebody needed to build it. And I said, listen, I've got a degree in computer engineering. I've been with this company, 6 years. I have all these certs. Let me have it. And they said, wow, with that degree does help you get here. So I think what the degree did is it raised that max ceiling of where I could possibly get to, but it didn't start to come into play for like 6-8 years, right?
right.
So I liked that I had a long-term vision in mind where I said, I don't want to just settle for technician or even engineer. I want to be a subject matter expert. That sounds great. And so if I didn't have that degree and maybe that long-term thinking, I don't think I would have gotten there. So I didn't feel like it was valuable for the longest time, and I did regret it. But I feel like in after a very long time, I started to feel that it was good because it gave me this exposure to things that I wouldn't normally have been exposed to. Pretty boring things, right? Like things that would be like, no, but I guess I'll take it because you're telling me to. Because it's like years and years of studying computers in those degrees.
Exactly.
And so they give you tons of stuff. And yeah, so I'm still on the fence for it. I think if you can afford it, not just the money, but also the time, spending years on that, go for it. It's probably going to be worth it. But there's nothing wrong with just saying, okay, I'm going to get a cert and then I'm going to get a job right here. And that's a 1 month path compared to like 2, 3, 4 year long path.
Exactly. And, that's one thing I tell people when they ask me that question, degree or certification. I'm like, you got to do what's right for you. Everyone's journey into this field is different. And I feel like there's not necessarily a wrong or right way to a certain point in this field. There's many different paths and everyone's path is different. And you got to find out what works for you and your career goals. I want to hear more about once you got into the cybersecurity field, and you started like learning more, like how did you start learning that knowledge and, what were you doing?
The security stuff. So I think I didn't know. And I think if you don't know what to learn, then certs are great to go because they're going to say learn this, learn this, learn this, learn this. So if you don't have a mentor, a helping hand to be like, here's what to learn, here's what to learn, here's what to study and focus on, then a cert is going to show you those things. Now, is it going to be showing you the things you need to know right now? No, it's going to show you there's things that it thinks people should know, and some of it's going to be hit or miss. And so it's not perfect, but it is something to show you because you're walking through the dark. You're going there's snow all over, and you're trying to find the sidewalk, and you're like, I don't know where to go. And a cert blows off the sidewalk and says, "Here's the sidewalk. Walk down this." And okay, thanks, I can get there now. And so that's very helpful when you just don't know where to go. So that was number one. I just wanted to cert up. I wanted to learn all of the commands on all these devices and just really be like, okay, what is my wheelhouse? What is my bread and butter? It is these Cisco firewalls. It is intrusion detection systems. It is the SIM. And so I wanted to learn them inside and out. And there's nothing you could tell me about it that I didn't know, or there's nothing you could challenge me with that I didn't know. Like that was my goal, is to be sort of the backstop for everything that comes, everything that could be a possible problem with that. And of course, that took years to get there, right? You're drowning. You're underwater for the longest time. Like you're just learning everything, and it's through a fire hose, and you can't get to the point where you're looking at like what new features are out there or all that kind of stuff because you're just way behind and you're trying to catch up. So that was kind of my attitude, and with that attitude, there were people that saw that I was hungry to learn, and so I did have some nice mentors on the team. A couple people with their CCIEs, significantly higher, more certs than me, were showing me things, and I think when it comes to a good career or a good job, maybe anywhere, but at least in IT, I look at it as there's kind of a trifecta of things that you're looking for. Pay that you think is fair, so good pay that you like. A work environment that you think is challenging and interesting to you, something you actually like doing, and then the team. Like sometimes I'm on a team where I hate the team, but those other two things are great, right? And so
Yep.
you just hate coming to work every day because you hate your boss, you hate your coworkers, all this sort of thing. So you're just not happy in that situation. So even that team can go a long way. So if your pay is maybe not as good, but you have a great team, that's fun. You're hanging out with your buds.
100%. Yeah.
And then I think it's also extremely valuable if your team has a great mentor or two on there to show you things that you wouldn't have learned on your own or with another team that's just not so helpful. So I think I was lucky to have like all those things with that job, and so I stuck with that for a long time.
And that's one thing I've talked to a lot of people about. I'm a director of network operation. I could actually go and make a lot of money elsewhere. I don't make the best salary for what I do, but I absolutely love my team and love what I do. One of my biggest fears getting into the industry and advancing is typically the further you go up the career ladder, the more siloed off you get. You get to become that specialist like you really wanted to become. And I wanted to do a lot of things. Like I didn't want to get siloed off yet in my career. And that's one thing in my position. I'm the director of network operations, but I really get to do it all. I mean, I have to be a jack of all trades to keep everything running smoothly. And that's one thing I really enjoy.
Yeah, yeah, you do need to, and you need to learn like beyond your scope, right? So like
Absolutely.
a problem that I had sometimes was like I would trace the fault to maybe a virtual machine. I'm saying something's wrong on that virtual machine, and they would trace it back to me, saying nope, something's wrong on your firewall. And so we had this kind of like, no, it's your problem, no, your problem. So I would need to
Yep.
go and learn like the networking stuff of the virtual machine, and I'm like, oh, you've got multiple interfaces here. How are they processing this? So they're doing round robin in there, and this is their ARP table, and like go into their world a little bit, just like a couple inches of feet in, just to say, here is where I think your problem could be. Have you looked at
Yep.
this? Yeah, your scope goes beyond a bit where you're good at. And the other thing that I really like doing to try to get promotions was I really like this was my weird, like, just I don't know, thing that I enjoyed, which was I wanted other teams to try to snipe me over to their team, or to steal me onto their team, right? And so if any other team in the business was like, hey, we think this might be your problem, I would just jump at it. I'd be like, oh, let me help you with your problem. Here, I'll show you what I've got on my side, and let me go over to your office and we can work, together on this. And so I started making friends with the other teams, and they saw how much of a valuable resource I was to their team at times. And they're like, anytime we want help, we're going to ask Jack because he's going to be very helpful. And so now you've got other teams that are like requesting me and asking for me and this sort of thing. And if I could do even more to be like more helpful to them, then maybe they're like gonna like say, hey, we want him on our team. And the goal of that is if there's multiple managers asking, can we recruit Jack over to our team? We would love to have him on our team. Like if that question gets asked to my manager, we want him on our team. What is it going to take? Is he available? Then I know that I'm worth more money. And that's what it all comes down to. I'm now worth more to the business. So now there's a battle for who gets Jack, right? Oh, I
Yeah.
want to keep him. Well, hey, wait a minute. This guy wants me. Maybe he's got a better offer. I should talk to him. No, listen, you got to stay here. Why though? Because, and so you're not being disloyal to the company. You're still staying in the company, but they're seeing that your value is now getting more bigger. And the other thing that I use, which was I thought was code for I want more money, was I want more responsibility. Can I have more things to do? Give me more responsibility, more things that are under my belt. And the more things that they loaded up under me, again, the more valuable I felt that I was to the business. And so if I could do that, if I could be good at having this responsibility, I would then say, listen, I've added these extra things to my plate. Is that worth more to the business? Is it worth more to you that I'm able to do this? And so I was very hungry for helping other teams and learning new things and trying to take on more responsibility. I was quite the go-getter at the time.
Actually, a really good tip, and I can attest to that in my personal career. I didn't actually directly think of that way, but looking back and reflecting on my career, that's how some of my largest raises I've ever gotten were, because I just took on so many more responsibilities and just was so hungry to learn. And they didn't go unnoticed. They saw, like, they're like, damn, we need to pay this person more money. Otherwise he's going to get, sniped. He's going to get, headhunted to go work somewhere else. We want to keep this guy, and our investment into this person. Cause let's be honest, it costs a lot of money to replace someone in the tech industry. All the training
Mm-hmm.
you gotta do to train them up. It didn't go unnoticed. And that's not the case at all employers. Let's be honest. There are
Yeah,
some
yeah, some don't
employers
care.
out there that don't care, but yeah,
The other thing I
absolutely.
like doing is hobnobbing with the other businesses, right? So if I go to the conference, I would always make a point to be like, I was hanging out with some guys from Google and Facebook and all this, and other security engineers, and this is how we come to the agreement to solve this. My buddies over there at Netflix, like I would use this kind of language to be like, wow, you're like really friends with these people? Yeah, yeah. I was just talking with them at the conference because you run into people at conferences and you learn where they work. And so this, I think, also gave them this kind of ooh, keep this guy. He's going to be, recruited by the Fang Corporation. And I thought that was really interesting as well. Of just like, hey, this guy's trying to like go somewhere in his career. Let's make it that this is where he goes in his career. And so they really did treat me nicely because they saw that I was, really trying hard to do something big there, and they wanted to have me, do the big thing there.
It sounds like you had it made. It sounds like you had your dream job there. What made you decide to eventually switch into the podcasting world?
So there was, and this is my tip for everyone. If you take one takeaway, it's this: I want you to start a blog.
No, 100%. I say that all the time
Yeah.
too. So
All right, great. So when I was there, I was learning that the only people who know that I'm any good are my coworkers and my customers. And that's a small number of people in the world. That's like 10 people, right? So it's like, okay, how do I prove my worth to the world even bigger than this? Because if I quit this job and I go to get a new job, I've got to prove to them that I know what I'm talking about, and all this. Going through a interview process is a big pain in the neck. They have 100 other resumes they're going to be looking through. Why does yours stand out, right? So I thought to myself, how do I teach more people more things? How do I help even more people outside my business? And this is where the idea to start a blog started. And my blog was initially just notes of my troubleshooting techniques. So if I have a problem with a firewall, it has this error message. I'm Googling it. I'm not finding like good answers. It's on page 13 of Google. And then you have to scroll down like another 20 pages before you finally find the answer. Oh, this is how you troubleshoot that. And so the blog is like, okay, when you hit this error message, here's the troubleshooting technique done. And it's just nice and dry, quick to the point. And guess how many times I hit that error message in the future and then just looked at my blog, because we should all be keeping notes anyway of like, oh, here's the command that you use all the time on this.
absolutely.
Here's the switches that you did. Here's what tool to use here and this sort of thing. So we have these notes. Just make those notes public. That's all I'm asking you to do. Your troubleshooting steps to fix things, your hot tips for using this tool or that or whatever. Anything that you think is valuable to you is probably going to be valuable to someone else. Make it a blog, and then you can reference that yourself. And so I was blogging, and I was just putting my troubleshooting techniques out there and tips and stuff. And that helped me in like a million ways. So number one is it helped me explain these complex problems in as simple terms as possible, because it's not easy to explain how to fix things. When you're looking at it, you're like, this is just gibberish. I don't even
Uh,
understand my own notes, right? What is this? And so you have to rewrite it to make it clear, because now you're learning that you can't even write good documentation. And so now you're writing better. And so I had this kind of documentation for how I'd fix all these things. And my team was learning like, oh, don't even ask Jack. Just go to his blog. He's probably got it sorted there. And sure enough, they were. They were finding the tutorial on how to do this on there. And of course, it's scrubbed. There's no, IP addresses or passwords or anything up there. But
right.
the idea was, how can I make more? And so it started getting popular. People were going to the blog, and it was getting hundreds of hits, thousands of hits, and it was right there at the top of Google search when you search for certain errors and that sort of thing. And I was like, this is great. And so that kind of grew, where I said, okay, I'm on year 4 of the blog, and I'm like, how do I teach more people more things? Like, this is going well. Let's make some YouTube tutorials. Let's do some talks at conferences. Let me try to expand this even more. And after a while, there was people that were just emailing me saying, listen, I've got a upgrade I'm doing this weekend. I'm troubleshooting this problem. Do you mind if I get you on the phone? We could do a remote session. I'll pay you to be my engineer for the weekend. I'm like, well, this is great. Now I'm getting like one-off job offers from this thing. And then there are people reaching out, like emailing, saying, I really appreciate your blog. It's been very helpful for our whole team here at this company. And now suddenly, like, now I have a contact at a company if I want to quit my job. And so it really did open up the doors so that I could pick and choose what my new future is going to be, because
Yeah.
there are more people who knew me. I was more established in the world of IT. And that was going on for 7 years before I started the podcast. And so then at that time, the building the stuff at work, trying to build the security operations center was really hard. It was stressing me out. I did get burnt out. You're absolutely right in the intro. And I was like, I don't know if this is for the path for me. And so at the same time, I was I was just listening to podcasts. I loved podcasts so much, and especially shows like This American Life and Radiolab and 99% Invisible, where they had this strong storytelling, and then there's a lot of music behind it, and there's these really gripping stories that really are really fascinating. And so I was just really into that, and at the same time, I was learning security. So I was listening to security podcasts, and the two just weren't meeting. The security podcasts were about there's some like this that are interviewing people in the industry. Tell me about this and that, and that's great. And then there's news podcasts. So it's like, here's what happened this week, and I'm like, I want the slow news show. I want the news from 6 years ago, where we now have all the answers to a story, when in the first week you don't have any answers to anything. This thing got breached. Who did it? I don't know. How bad is it? We don't know what was taken. How did they get in? We don't know. Okay, did you know anything? No. Okay, so that drives me nuts. So I'm like, well, let's wait for like 2 years. When we find out everything, then tell me the story. And so I actually reached out to a few podcasters saying, can you do that? And they said, no, I'm not waiting 2 years on a news story. You're insane. That's the dumbest idea ever. I said, oh, crap. I have this vision and I can't explain it to anyone. Do I have to make it myself? And I thought about it for like 9 months before finally saying, okay, I'll give it a try. And I got a book called Out on the Wire, which is the secrets of storytelling for audio storytelling, really. And that's where I focused, was audio storytelling. There's nothing visual about it. There's no written word. It's all in the ear. And there's something special about storytelling just in that scene, because that's its own like fabric of tapestry that an artist works on. Is okay, we have the ear, and you could be specialized in that, which is very different than other media that you can consume. So I really focused on that, and I met some of these heroes that I talked about earlier, and really focused on their techniques and their crafts, and try to do it exactly how they did, and that's how I got the thing started.
With so much going on in the tech industry, and you said you like the slow news, the story that happened 2 to 6 years ago. How do you decide which stories are actually worth telling?
Yeah, I have a classic one I like to use is Google Alerts for the term hacker sentenced. So if hackers sentenced, well, I could just work backwards from there. Okay, well, that
Yeah.
means that he was found guilty. And if he was found guilty, then that means he was arrested. And if he was arrested, that means he did a crime. And if he did a crime, then that means there's something going on there, right? So it's now I've got the soup to nuts story. I've got the beginning all the way to the end, because when he's guilty, now we know we have a sentence. That guy got put in jail for 10 years or whatever. And that's the end of the story. I mean, you could probably get out of jail in 10 years and do it again or something, but I think it feels like it's the end of the story. We've got the whole thing wrapped up.
Mhm.
And that is where I think like, okay, this is finally ready to tell. So that's one aspect of it. Another is I really like stories with a lot of twists and turns. What I try to do every story is to get us going in one direction and say, okay, this is a story about this, but then everything goes wrong and then it changes, and now it's like, nope, this is now a story about this instead. Everything is different, and so that change is that curve, that disruption in the direction we were going adds a lot of dopamine to our head, because there's a suspense happening, and I like giving you dopamine, and I can go on more about these neurochemicals, because that is a thing I think about a lot.
That's so cool. And that's one thing I really want to try to get better with, is also finding ways to tell stories. I've started bringing people on and having them tell their story, but I really think if you can lead someone through a story, that it just has so much more value to it. Just finding a way to hook them in.
Yeah,
Um,
some of those early stories that I think really inspired me as well is John McAfee talking about being on the run and running from the cops and hiding out in different countries. I thought that was just mind-boggling when I first heard him tell that story. But
yeah.
also Kevin Mitnick, Ghost in the Wires. When I read that, I was just like, "This is so good. We're going in all kinds of adventures here. This is exactly what I want more of." And so it's those stories there that I think I was like, "Just give me more of that," and I couldn't find it, and that was another inspiration.
Now, have you ever been into like a story that you really wanted to tell, but the deeper you got into it, you realized like you had to kill it because it was either like too risky or too sensitive?
Yeah, there's a story that I feel is pretty out there, and I have to be careful covering it because there's probably people that don't want the story out there, right? And so some of these I have not published yet, and I'm just gathering information on. Um, so yeah, there definitely is stories like that, and yeah, I think the thing is that I feel like I have a huge audience, and so one thing I want to be careful of is not to glamorize hacking and make it all sexy and romantic, and so I think I have an ethic to make it seem like, okay, if you mess around, you could get in a lot of trouble here. And so I don't want to bring on people who have hacked and stolen like $1 million and then like, yeah, nothing happened. I got away with it. I'm fine. And then I'm just be like, what have I done? I've just taught people how to like break the law. And so I have to, I really like stories that have kind of a redemption arc where you did something wrong and you came out of it and you're good at the end, or or a justice arc of some kind where yeah you've done something really bad and you went to prison. So yeah, I think that really helps a lot.
You have any lessons that you've like learned unexpectedly by having a guest on the podcast, that kind of made you rethink what you thought you knew?
Yeah, the Pirate Bay episode was really like that. I thought I understood how the world worked until I talked to Peter. And Peter had a whole different way of navigating the world. And I was like, well, I didn't know you could do that. So, like, for instance, the Pirate Bay guys got arrested for running this piracy site, but then kept the site going. And then they went to court and they kept the site going. And then they got found guilty at court and they went to like then they still kept the site going. So I was like, "What's this?" And he's like, "Why not keep it going the whole time?" But you were just charged and you were forced to take it down. No, I wasn't forced to take it down. I was finding ways to keep it up while I was in prison. Like what? And so even when they was like, "Okay, you're guilty. You have to go to prison," he's like, "I don't want to." And so he didn't go to prison. And it was like there's this just craziness that happened. Sweden has different rules than America, but I was like, what is this? And so he's like, okay. Then when I got to prison finally, I was trying to seek asylum, and I thought, what if I make a religion, and then or even a political party like the Pirate Party, and then run for president. I don't think they can put someone in prison who's running for president. It's like
Oh
found
my
all these
gosh.
loopholes to get through things, and just I was flabbergasted almost the whole episode of like, what is that? Can you do that? Can you get away with that? And he's like, yes. And so yeah, he got on the ballot and everything, and it was just a wild guy. And I just love the way he thinks about you don't have to. You can find a way around it.
You've interviewed tons of different people, and told some really crazy and out there stories. And what is one thing you feel that separates someone who, I'm trying to think of the best way to say this, who crashes and burns from the ones who get hired by like the big firms? And, I'm not necessarily talking about hacking per se, but, just cybersecurity in general.
I think this just this endless flame of curiosity goes a long way. It's not just like here's how to do this, but then it's like, well, let me try now. Let me see if I configure it incorrectly, or what if I put this flag up, or what does this thing do? You don't just learn it and be done and close the book and say, okay, I'm done. You just have to know a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. And so that endless desire to just learn and do and hands on keyboard and trying and trying and trying, I think is where you really see this huge separation between somebody who just kind of plateaus off in an early part of their career versus someone who just never stops growing and getting higher and higher in their career. And so that is like starting new projects in the weekend and building things and buying equipment to like try your home lab out, or getting on someone else's equipment, or just seeing what your computer can do, like pushing it to the limits. And yeah, that is really hard to teach, and it's hard to convince someone to be endlessly interested in this and to care a lot. It really has to be kind of internal to you to do that. And if computers isn't the thing that has just this endless, you're just like endlessly curious of it, or you just can't stop wanting to know more, getting better at it, then find the thing that is giving you that passion of like, I just love this, and go more into that. Just make it legal.
That is such great advice right there. Everyone, make it legal, keep it safe. Absolutely. What is one thing in the security world that you think people aren't paying enough attention to right now?
Oh, I might have a hot take on this, but I think
I love
I,
hot takes.
I think I think online crime is cybercrime, and so when you see people trying to steal Robux from other teenagers, where's the security vendor that's trying to fix that? I was just at RSA, and there's nobody that's like we're gonna help you secure your Robux. And so there's no vendor there to help from swatting or doxing other like teenagers on the internet or to help you stay safe from I don't know online predators or something. And so there's this big old dangerous world on the internet, and there's a lot of people that are scamming and doing crimes on there. And I don't think I don't know whose responsibility it is to take care of that. And so I'm trying to convince the security teams to be like, listen, this is important. We've got to do this. We've got to help people who are, there's a whole bunch of people that email me saying how they're in big danger and they're in a lot of trouble. And what they explain to me is that I've been told this like dozens of times. I'm the most surveilled person in the world. They have monitoring tools on my camera. My phone is hacked. My email is hacked. Everything is hacked. I've had to turn it all off and buy new stuff like multiple times. And I think they've planted something into my brain. And so
What is that thing?
I think you're bugged.
and there is, I mean, that might be a neurological problem and not a cyber problem. But the thing is that this technology is just so prevalent in our world that there should be some way to be like, listen, here's a secure device. Let me inspect your device. Let me verify to you that you are virus free and you're safe. And there's just not many people that are out there supporting somebody who just is desperate to have a secure phone because they're like, I know it's hacked. I know they're in there. I know they're doing stuff. And there's just no simple place to go to get help in that situation. And that's scary when and some of these cases are true where you have like a revengeful ex who just wants to put spyware on your phone and malware and keep an eye on what you're doing and you just can't seem to shake them off and you get desperate at times and so that there are some real problems out there that just aren't getting addressed, I think.
No, there is. And it seems like there's not an easy answer to it, so everyone's just kind of turning a blind eye to it. That's the feeling I get. It's not a simple thing that we can monetize. So why go after that? I don't know. Maybe
Yeah,
that's just
the
me.
the monetization is hard to do. It's a lot of hand holding sometimes, or a lot of care and feeding of each problem, and desperate people and emergency situations. So yeah, it's very difficult to deal with that one at least.
Absolutely. And I kind of want to dive into your story now. You're in the cybersecurity job. You left to do your podcast. What keeps you going now? You've got a really successful podcast. What keeps you cranking out episodes at the rate I think is amazing? First of all, like every 2 weeks you got a brand new episode out, and I feel like they're no small feat. How do you keep motivated?
I was going every 2 weeks, and I was barely staying above water, but now I've switched to once a month.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot to that. I think for every podcaster, they face three major, or maybe every creator, they've all faced these three major problems. Number one is creating something valuable to other people and something great. People turn good stuff off to listen to great stuff, right? At least in podcasts, right? They want great things. There's a million podcasts out there. Why listen to something good when there's great stuff?
Yeah.
And so making something great, something valuable to people that they're like, oh, this is exactly what I want. This is great. That's really hard work. And so there's a lot of struggle there. Then there's the struggle of building an audience and trying to get listeners or viewers or whatever the case is to be like, okay, I've got something great. Now I just need people to consume it. And that is a huge trouble. I read a lot of marketing books to get through that and did a lot of marketing myself. And it could have crashed and burned real easy if I didn't go through that trouble of spending years marketing my show to get off the ground. But the last thing that I think everyone faces is the combination of keeping it going or monetizing it. Like those could be the same thing as well, right? So you've got this thing, you're building this audience now. Is it giving you the value back to want to keep going, or is it too much trouble? Even though people love it and it's going big, it's just too much work for me. Whatever, you could stop, or you could be like, I can't afford this. I've got work to do. I've got food to get on the table. This isn't bringing me any money. Yes, it's fun, but I got to do something that actually pays the bills. And so that last step, I think a lot of people try to do a little too early. They try to maybe monetize their stuff like right out the door, and I'm like, wait, you've got a long road before you can get there. You really need to do this stuff in order.
Yeah.
And so yeah, what keeps me going? Well, I think I have that like burning desire of curiosity. I want to hear these stories. I love going to conferences and saddling up at the bar and listening to people tell me the craziest things of like what happened in cyberspace, their adventures in cyberspace, right? I'm like, what? That happened at that company? I never thought that I'd hear that, and I'm still fascinated by what's out there. I haven't gotten bored with the stories.
That's cool.
I'm still like, wow, I never thought like, just this week I came up with 2 ideas for episodes that I started researching that I never looked into before, and so those ideas are, is there how how come I've never covered a story about corporate espionage where one company hacked into another company to steal their data and then use it for their benefit? Now China does it all the time, but like an American company, has any American company done that? And if so, who's done that? And so I started researching that. And the other thing is, has anyone been brought up on federal hacking charges and won the case? And it's always the government wins the case, but has anyone won? And if so, they must be the biggest badass ever. And so I want to know who that was, right? And so I'm still discovering like these really cool ideas of what's out there. And so I'm just really fascinated by that. So I'm just a guy that loves learning, hearing stories, learning about technology, and I'm in the right space for all that. I love just tell me more stories and tell me about the technology used and all these kind of things. This is great. Just keep going. Tell me more. So I just love that. I do also love the energy I get from the listeners, right? So this was not something that I thought, as on that last step of like how to keep it going, sustain this, was going to be on the roadmap. But there's this energy I get from the listeners, and a lot of people just tell me how they've changed their life. Like you said, you were a bulldoze driver and then you switched into IT. Well, there's a lot of people who tell me that same story, but they were like, while I was bulldozer driver, I listened to your show. That got me into it, and I forgot how much I loved about IT, and now I switched. And so when you hear that, you're just like, wow, I'm doing something bigger than just this show. I'm changing careers, I'm changing lives, whatever this is. And just to hear such good stuff from people. I mean, your intro alone was just such a nice thing that you said about me. And that it gives me eudaimonia. Do you know what eudaimonia is?
No.
So some people live in like a hedonistic world where they just want to please themselves all the time. And that's cool and all. You do you. But I try to do eudaimonia. And that is like the difference is like hedonism is like this moment is great. How do I make it greater? But eudaimonia is like my life is great, but how do I make my life greater? And so it's this long-term happiness that I'm trying to build, right? And so when I pop on a show like this and somebody tells me such nice things, I didn't do shit today. I was doing nothing all day. And now I got like these nice things. So it's not like I was trying to optimize that for my day. That was you're talking about things you heard me say months ago, years ago, yet you're telling me today. And so it's great that this kind of stuff comes back to me on a frequent basis. When I go to conferences, I hear stuff like that all the time. And that gives me that sense of eudaimonia. What I'm doing is great. Life feels great because people appreciate what it is I'm doing. And if I can optimize for this feeling of eudaimonia, then I think that that's going to give me great success. How do I make my life feel greater or better and in the long-term sense of it? And yeah, when things come back to me years or months later after I do it, that's it right there. That's not that immediate gratification. That's that long-term gratification.
You know, it's funny you say that. I'm listening to that, and I feel so similar to that. The whole reason I started my podcast, and before that, my YouTube channel, is when I got into tech, it was a YouTuber who convinced me like I could do this. I was watching YouTube videos.
I think you're good at it. You've got the right voice. You've got a good smooth rhythm to it.
Oh man, that didn't come easy. I've been doing this for 4 or 5 years now. But once I got into the field, like I wanted to give back. Like I wanted to help other people. And it wasn't about the money in the beginning, and I can't say it's not about the money because the money fuels the mission. You know what I mean? I'm going to be 100% honest. I'm transparent about that. And one day, who knows, it might become my full-time gig. I really love what I'm doing and I love being kind of connected into that world still. But I really enjoy it. Like when when I have someone come to me and said, I am a trash truck driver. I literally this week I had someone come to me and like, I'm driving a trash truck, listening to your podcast episodes, and you are inspiring me to finally make the career change. All my life I was told I can't do anything else. And listening to your story and the people's story you bring on the show I'm finally going to make the switch. I'm doing what I need to do to make a career change. That just brings me so much joy and so much happiness. And I'm a long way from where you are, but it's it
And I
just
want you to know
keeps me
that
going.
every time you hear that, there's probably less than 1% of people who are doing that are actually telling you that they're doing that.
Yeah.
And so for every one, there's at least 100 other people who have done that. They just never told you that they did that. The inbound reach outs is very small compared to what people are actually feeling or thinking.
Absolutely. And I first of all just want to say thank you for the amazing job you do with your podcast and the amount of people you inspire. I think you do an amazing job storytelling, and thank you for all that you do with your podcast.
Oh, thank you. That's very nice of you.
Speaking of, I mean, for those that have been living under a rock and don't know about your amazing podcast, where can they catch you?
Well, it's easy to find. Just type Darknet Diaries in any search engine you can discover. But I'm a podcast. It's a podcast, so you can find it on your favorite podcast player.
Absolutely. As we start to land the plane here, you've given us so much wonderful advice, but do you have like that one piece of advice like that you wish you would have known when you were first starting out in the industry?
Yeah, I think what a lot of people ask me is like, well, I want to get into hacking or security. Where do I go? And I often give this piece of advice. I say pick one of three foundations to just get good at, and from there you're going to be able to you apply a security on top of it. So I'll give you these foundations. Foundation number one, and you just pick one of these. You can learn all of them if you want, but just pick one of these. Foundation number one, system network, system admin. Right. So this is setting up a new operating system, virtual machines, Linux, Windows, now applications on top of that. Get some an email box working, or LDAP, or something that maybe companies or enterprises are doing. Learn how to troubleshoot services and just computers at more of a server level. That network, that's a system administration. If you can do that, when you go to learn about cybersecurity, you're going to be able to apply pretty much everything to an operating system. All this cybersecurity stuff is going to have to happen on an operating system. So if operating systems are your bread and butter and you understand what services are supposed to be running, what services shouldn't be running, and then when you see a service that's not supposed to be running, you're going to know immediately how to zoom in on that and say, this isn't right. Something's wrong with this. And you're going to be able to detect security problems, or if you're an attacker, you'll be able to know exactly where the weak points are. Hey, let's see if they configured this properly, because I've configured this a lot, and I know exactly my way around the configuration. And if they didn't do this right, I can probably get in through here, right? So you're gonna look at the world through this lens of operating systems and applications, and you're gonna know how to just weave in and out of that traffic just incredibly well. And so I think that's a great foundation. Foundation number two is networking. So this is like TCP/IP, and if you're understanding how a packet moves through the wire and how a computer receives it and how it sends it, that I think is going to go a long way. So we're talking routing and switching and anything that's just traveling, like communication is traveling. What does it look like when it's encrypted? What does it look like when it's non-encrypted? Or what does this protocol look like, that protocol? And you can capture things just right in the air, out of the air if you want. If you could sniff
Yeah.
Wi-Fi packets or on the wire, and you could replay that into your machine to say like, oh, let's reassemble this and see what this looks like. And you could start analyzing data this way. Well, the thing is that when you go into cybersecurity, most attacks are going to be over a network. It's. I think that's just going to happen. You're
Yeah.
going to see things coming over the wire. And so you're going to notice that there's a lot of security devices out there that are detecting things that are coming over the wire. They're inspecting the traffic over the wire, and that's how they're able to say, whoa, there's a problem here. And so if you're able to understand everything that's going over the wire, then that's going to give you a huge, just like that's your vision into the world of cybersecurity. Like, wait, hold on, let me look at the packets. Let me look at Wireshark. Let me analyze the path that went through here to see how they exploited, where they came from, all these kind of things. It's going to give you this wonderful tool just to use to sort things out. So that's foundation number 2. And the last foundation is, where am I at? Oh, programming languages. I think if you learn how to code, how to read code, just build things, just keep building things, program stuff. So this is Python or C or JavaScript. I think Python and JavaScript are probably the 2 biggest bang for your buck. If you just study one of those 2, you're gonna be fine. Because JavaScript is running the entire internet. All websites pretty much use it, and you're gonna see it everywhere. And there's a lot of things you could do with JavaScript. And then Python is just extremely useful and versatile. It often exists as default on like a Linux machine. And so if you get into a Linux machine, but you didn't bring your hacker tools with you, and there's Python just already installed, you could just program your own thing. And now you've got like whatever tool you want, right? So if you could just whip up like your own hacking tools out of thin air, you're going to be extremely helpful, right? And so the reason why I think programming languages, like if this is your foundation, because you don't start in security, you start with one of these foundations. Right. Because then if you build that foundation of learning programs, well, guess what? Every piece of malware is a program, and it is designed with code. And so you'll be able to reverse engineer that code or understand how that code works or why it's programmed that way. And that is going to give you the perfect vision into detecting things, understanding malware, or making your own malware if you're an attacker, or using it, because it's really like being I don't know, just a baker or living off the land. Like you're just extremely useful to be able to examine code, build code, reverse engineer code. And so, yeah, you asked me for what's my advice. This is it. It's pick one of these foundations, make that your bread and butter, get into that, and just be like square on that. Because the world of IT is huge, and it's hard to know like where do I pick, what do I go for? Just pick one of these, and then if you're great at that, you can lean on that, you can rely on that. That's your tools in your tool belt. When you come to the problem, you've got 20 tools, you're ready to work. If you don't have that foundation, you're going to come to a problem and say, I don't even know where to begin, and that's going to be frustrating. So build one of these foundations, and you'll go really well in cybersecurity.
It's just like building a house. You got to build your house on a strong foundation. People will ask me, well, can I just skip networking? Can I just skip this and that? And I'm like, you have to understand how the network works before you can figure out how to protect the network. It is literally the pathway everyone should follow. And I know a lot of people just try to skip it. They just want to get to the fun, sexy part of cybersecurity. But you really got to learn the building blocks to get there. So, Jack, go ahead.
No, I think you're right.
I really appreciate you taking the time. I could spend easily a whole nother hour just picking your brain and stuff. I really appreciate you coming on the channel and just sharing so much great wisdom.
Yeah, well, this was a lot of fun. I really like chopping it up with you.
Absolutely. Again, thank you so much for taking the time and sharing these wonderful advice and stories. And, I hopefully we'll get to have you on the channel again in the future.
Oh, that'd be great. Have a good one.
Absolutely. Everyone, I really hope you enjoyed this episode. I really hope you took away some wonderful knowledge. I know I did. And that's another great thing I love about this podcast is I get to learn things from these subject matter experts. And if you learn something, let me know. If you're watching this on YouTube, let me know down in the comments below. Everyone, I hope you enjoyed this episode. And until next time, keep learning.